Aloha. I wanted to make a quick video in reference to a question somebody asked me about on comments to go into a little bit more detail about psychedelics, and I just wanted to take a moment to focus in on that and then to expand it to the storylines of what I usually expand upon, because it's very part of this bigger picture, the internal and external storylines that get played. And for me, it's been very impactful for me. Like my most heavy duty lifetime experiences was when I went to Peru and did ayahuasca with the ceremonial and ayahuasca shaman down there. And it was it's inexplainable, really, but I'll do what I can to try to explain it. So first thing, well, I'll start there because there's a difference between the ayahuasca experience and like mushrooms or acid or San Pedro. There's a difference with plant medicine with each kind of plant. And these are like different channels. Basically, how I understand them is you experience your reality just like when you watch television. You watch a certain television show and you feel a certain way. You get certain emotions, you get certain insights, you get certain perspectives on life, of yourself. Same thing when you are experiencing a psychedelic, but you are getting this directly from nature. This is why this stuff is illegal. And basically, the thing when you tap into nature, the essence is in connection, in showing you different versions of your reality and how it's connected, as opposed to the mainstream media, television, politics, alternative news, social media. It describes to you how you are separate, how everybody is successful, and some people are successful and some people are poor and dirty, or whatever it is. That is the program as a whole. That's the mind control program. Psychedelics are about expanding your mind into interpreting the soul and the soul connections. The mindset and the program of the mainstream mind control program is to make you believe only in the physical reality and separate you from the Most High, the source energy, anything that is outside of the so-called control grid or the physical reality. This is why the scientism community is heavily based upon atheism. This is why the atheists really lock into the university system, Neil deGrasse Tyson, that whole thing. Why these Bill Nyes and Neil deGrasse and Michio Kaku's, they never go into spirit at all, because that's literally a different world. This world that exists in the old boxed in reality is based upon keeping you from realizing your connections, keeping you locked into that which is so-called in control. If you have limitations, if you worship limitations, and you don't have unlimited connection and unlimited power and unlimited potential to have a realization beyond the structured university system, if you are convinced that you have none of those connections, and then you are simultaneously convinced that you are only a monkey evolution, evolved from a monkey, stardust from a big bang, and are subject to all these so-called laws that are basically just theories. If you believe that, dumb down one version, which is your interconnected space, and uplift the other version, which is your separated space. That is the dumbing down of your creative intelligence and the amplifying of the destructive intelligence. The destructive intelligence can only exist to be amplified is if the creative intelligence is removed from that program. And this is what this whole mind control program is about, the collective and the individual one. And it's being maximized in the social media outlets and transhumanism, the transhumanism program, the alien agenda. This is all about separation. Like a lot of these so-called aliens, they are when you understand their storylines, or some aliens work with the government and all this other stuff. And if this when the disclosure, that alien agenda disclosure stuff gets activated by the so-called powers that be, and then they start to tie into some of these alien stuff. This is what I was thinking about yesterday. This is kind of a side note. But people can already understand that the new age, the manipulation of the alien program, the so-called alien program, you can in a sense travel in time, go into the future, and see how these programs are going to be manipulated to control people. You can already see how the new age is going to be manipulated, and is already being manipulated to control people. So you can already say, and the same thing goes with Flat Earth, when they already talking about the so-called or actually the Flat Earth community are already talking about, well, I can't wait till the mainstream picks up on the Flat Earth. It's going to be great and all this. That is weak. That's some weak shit. Because you can already see how the mainstream utilizes programs, anything. Everything gets commercialized. Everything gets microwaved. Everything gets compartmentalized and turned into a program to enslave more people. So you can already see how, like with all the stuff with all the legalization of cannabis going on, everything that's going to be controlled by a control grid is going to be for the benefit of the control grid and not for the people. So even the people who are like, oh, the new age, when people start to see stuff, just think about like how it'll be if the government went new age, if the government went alien, if the government went flat earth. You can taste that flavor. It tastes like government cheese. It tastes like shit. It's just garbage. It's straight up garbage. So if you can already have that flavor, that understanding, you can know what those next steps would be like. And you can also simultaneously use that perspective to see how those programs are being activated right now in this moment, how it's being set up right now, and how people are falling into those traps, falling into those ideas that are not for the benefit of the people as a whole or the individual. And we can start to disassemble these programs before they get activated. And this is already happening right now with people who are sharing information, because some of these agendas, some of these storylines are right now not being activated because so many people are sharing information. If people weren't sharing information, then you wouldn't be able to activate a program to control a bunch of people, because it wouldn't work. So constantly, like I said, the so-called they adjust. I said this in previous video. The so-called they adjust to storylines that are being activated within the consciousness of the people. We see it from the fear perspective. You see it the other way around. You see it from, oh, they're making these moves, they're doing these things, and then you are placed in the reactionary emotional grid of what somebody else is doing, the disempowered victim program to where they are doing something to you. That only exists on a shallow layer, same way the destructive intelligence only exists within the creative intelligence as a whole. So all of these programs that are existing in these shallow layers are all existing within the destructive intelligence program to manipulate you from making the connection to yourself, to each other, and to the Most High. And this is what psychedelics does. This is what they do. This is what they show you in so many different ways. You can see different things, like when people do mushrooms. Like I can see the wall moving. You can see. You can hear. You can hear nature. It sounds silly when you try to interpret this stuff, but it really is true. Like, you can hear your depth of sight gets more potent. You can taste 10 times more, like with your ears, with your eyes, with your vision, with your imagination. You can see more connections. You lighten up. There's less of your artificial ego self and more of your true essence to experience your reality. So it's really, psychedelics are really more about turning off what you have thought to be yourself and turning on and allowing you to experience what the collective self really is. Nature, your natural connections, the space beyond the constructs of a one-sided linear perspective reality, that like the linear perspective of like the physical reality and all this other stuff. You can actually see and understand for that moment, because it's actually too overwhelming for this physical body to do it, to maintain that space, because this is an experience in itself, to where your expressions of yourself, like, so how I see it is why we have the physical reality, why we have this linear construct in one perspective, is you have the ability in your expression, in your art, in your words, in your music, in your personality, to express those interconnected colors and flavors and essence. You yourself, your expressions are allowed to shine through more vibrantly when you yourself are pulling those energies, pulling those colors, pulling those notes, those keys, those harmonics out of being completely linear, in one sense, in the physical reality, seeing it as a linear perspective, to be able to interpret all of these colors and these moods and these emotions and these insights. When you are, this is what the physical reality, a large part of what the physical reality is about. And the opposite version of that, the destructive intelligence, this is why the art gets removed from the school system, because you need to worship the university system. You need to worship conformity. And if you are locked into an idea of interconnectedness and a soul-driven reality, you won't be able to be controlled. So psychedelics are there to show you in your own way another picture of who you are. And different people resonate with different vibrations, different frequencies of, this is why there are so many different things. This is why you have cannabis, mushrooms, acid, ayahuasca, San Pedro. You have all these different things, and I don't really like to lump in acid with there, but it still has some kind of the same sort of things that I like to stick to more the natural, the solely natural, like straight out of the earth, like mushrooms. Like you could just pick that up and go on a trip. That's a tight knit circle, a tight knit storyline. That's like picking up a story out of the earth and reading that story through your your space. So basically, this is what psychedelics do. They show you the colorful interconnected versions of yourself, while the destructive intelligence or the control grid is based upon separating you from yourself and locking you into a specific reality based upon laws that are invented and theories that are invented by enslavers and controllers, and it gets manipulated all the way to the political scene. So back to the ayahuasca space. Ayahuasca is basically like a 5 hour, a 4 to 5 hour journey. And if you do it, I like saying doing it right, because there is a right way to do it when you're in ceremony, because there's a wrong way to do ceremony. So that means there's a right way to do ceremony. So when you're in ceremony, so like when I was in ceremony, we had a ceremonial shaman and we had an ayahuasca shaman, and this was in Peru. And the whole day, the day prior, we did a whole cleansing to where we had sulfuric water to 10 glasses to just like, it just clears you out. So that just cleans you up and clears you out. It's volcanic sulfur water, straight out of the mountain. And the next day, you're fasting and you're in silence the entire day. And then once you are once you're in a space to where everybody's ready, or you're in your location, you're in your area, the ceremonial shaman comes to set up everything. And what he does is he kind of gathers all of the energy of the group into a focus, a spiritual focus. And all the elements are involved. You have the fire, you have the earth, you have the water, you have everything that the shaman has been studying for his entire life into a ceremony. And like, it doesn't really matter who or what your background is and all that other stuff. You are with that shaman, and they're basically your guides, which is another thing that's really crucial when you are in these spaces, is to have a guide that you can trust, because you're vulnerable. You're in a space of vulnerability, and in that floaty space, your mind wants to. You're still rooted in your body, so your body wants to be safe, and it will convince you that you are not safe, so it makes sure that you are safe. So it will start to perceive things that are more colorful or more in depth, or whatever it is, more complex, as threats. And you will start to convince, your conscious mind will try to interpret things a certain way and convince you of certain things. This is why it's good to have a heavy duty anchoring in your true power, your essence, your connection with your ancestors and your guides and your angels, to be like, if this is it, then, we're going to do this. We're together. You're never alone. That's basically it. You're never alone. So whatever comes into your reality, same thing goes within your waking space. Whatever comes into, and the same thing goes with dreams in the last video I was talking about. If you can dream deeper when you have deep connections with your guides and your ancestors, because you transcend fear and you are actually working in the challenge space that will allow you to do more and you can only do more if you are outside of your emotional body, aware of your emotional body, but conscious enough to be outside of your emotional body and not subject to the emotional frequencies that are manipulated to dominate you. This is what the waking state is all about. This is why movies are out there, and it's all about triggering your emotions. Protests, racism, sexism, all this stuff, it's about your emotions. This is how they get people on the streets. This is how they get people to vote. It's how they get people to give their power away. So it's heavily based upon your emotion, your energy in motion. This is what your body is. So when you are with your shaman, so the ceremonial shaman works everything out, clears everything out, and prepares you, sets a clean slate for you to go into yourself, because you don't need anything. You don't need any tools or anything. This is just you and your essence, your soul. The medicine, the ayahuasca, just allows you to do that. It allows you to experience that through the natural gateway. So the ceremonial shaman sets you up for that, and then when you go into your area, you have like you have your comfort. You're ready, because you're gonna be there for a number of hours. And there was an ayahuasca shaman there whose entire life is based upon the medicine, the ayahuasca, and that whole reality as it's literally a medicine. Everything those shaman in their tribes, they come to that medicine man to heal them, and that's basically what it's based around. So anyway, so that's another trust factor at the same time. So that is another shaman there. And then you have your area, your setup, you're comfortable. You have people who are going to be watching over you, taking care of you. It's very safe. That's a good thing about, or that's one of the main things to focus in on psychedelics is your safe space, your ability to be comfortable, so you can truly be able to anchor and fly further in your reality, because you can let go more, because you're in a trusted space, you're in a safe space. So I'm kind of just like breezing through the entire ceremony just to get into the space. There's a lot more I can go into with the psychological perspectives of it, but it's for like this first video, I just want to explain the ceremony as a whole. So you're in your safe space, you're in with safe people, everything's cool, and the shaman is playing music, and music is very key because it keeps you, it triggers, like each note triggers something, each harmony triggers something, and it can also hold you in a space, so you're actually like floating in a space. You can get into a zone, like athletes get into a zone. You can get into a soul zone, and when you're in the soul zone, you can see more of yourself, and you can go further into yourself, basically. And also come back too, because it's an anchor here, because there's still like that, like you can still hear the drum, you can still hear the guitar, you can still hear these notes in the physical realm, but at the same time, what is that sound? Like that sound travels from the drum to your ear, and that note, that key, that harmony, there's information that travels there through your essence, and then once it gets in there, there's colors there, there's flavors there, and then there's abilities to go into other parts of yourself that you didn't even know existed once you were in that space. And how I experience ayahuasca is that once you ingest it, and it takes about 45 minutes to take effect, and you will purge, and purging in itself is a ceremony in itself. To purge is to you're not just, the people just throw up or whatever like that. You're not just throwing up. You are clearing your energy bodies. You are straight up clearing your energy bodies in order to project you into another space. It literally letting go. That's what this is. This is why ayahuasca does this to you. So when I go, a lot of people purge throughout the entire evening. I only purge once. Just how I feel it, and then like I'm in that space, and then I hold that space for the entire night, and I'm cool for the rest of the night. So once, how I explained the first time, the first purge was you feel it, you're gonna throw up, because you go from conscious, just like cool, okay, thinking like, all right, when's it gonna hit me, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I gotta throw up, and then you're in this kind of like daisy space, and then you purge. And what I saw when I purged is that there's I guess I can't really see, there's not really many on here, but see how this kind of is circular. This is more like hand-drawn sort of look, but the vision that I saw, envision this as like a tunnel. The one I saw was all blue and more straight lines, like the most beautiful art you can imagine, and then tunneled, and then you're actually like going into a space. I don't know if you can I'll find one. Anyway, it kind of it projects you into a space, and then when you're there, you feel another layer of comfort, like the feeling you feel right before you fall asleep, how you're falling asleep and waking up and falling asleep and waking up, before you go into sleep. You actually stay in that space. That's like a good example of that reality, but with with so much more access in your reality, so much more. You're not at all tired or anything. You are actually every thought that you have, you can see it in a different, you can see, like, so if a thought was one page in a book, and you're reading that one page just like in a regular, like in a conscious reality, if that's a one page in a book, imagine in an ayahuasca space, or even in a psychedelic journey, a thought in a psychedelic journey, or in this example on ayahuasca, one thought is actually a week long or a day long experience in like the jungle. Not literally, just as far as comparison goes. Like, you can read a page of a book, and you can have like a vision or a story or whatever. You can be like, oh wow, that's cool. I understand what the author is saying here, and I can really go there. Okay, yeah, you can. That's one way. that's still a page in a book. Now imagine that page, expand that page. So this is each thought. Expand that page to an entire, like a 3-day time span in a safe space in a jungle. Like, you're connecting with the trees, you're connecting with the weather, you're connecting with the people, you're connecting with the animals, you're connecting with the air, the water, the earth, the fire. You're connecting with all this stuff, and each one of those elements has a story to tell you. And within your abilities in that psychedelic awareness, you can tap into each one of those stories in every moment. And each time you tap into every layer, like if you go into that 3-day jungle, as opposed to just reading a sentence on a page, once you go into that jungle and then you connect with that fire, then you connect with another 3-day layer of information within the fire program, or within the water program, or within the animal program. And you can go further and further and further and further into that space, which is you going into yourself, because you are a manifestation of nature. So you are just tapping into your own antenna, into your own vessel that is that has like the stories that are in your genetic code. You're basically reading your genetic code. And this is why the shamans tell you, if you want to speak to any of your family members, any of your dead or alive, any of the elements, if you want to do anything, then do it in that space, because you are literally adjusting your genetic code. You are more at the helm of yourself than you will ever be when you are just walking around, going to work, going whatever you're doing, working at Kinko's or something. Like you, like your job is Kinko's when you work at Kinko's. When you're in ayahuasca or any kind of psychedelics, your job is yourself. This is why this stuff is illegal, and why we're so locked into the linear perspectives of our reality. So I guess that's pretty much a good way to explain it, as far as like being able to read one page. You're reading one page a day. If you're in a waking space, your conscious reality, at best, you read one page a day. And most of us aren't even allowed to read one page of our own book each day, because we are so bombarded by the distraction reality, our jobs, our so-called responsibilities, all of these limitations, the fear mentality. When you're in ayahuasca, all that stuff disappears, and your emotions do have an effect on you, because, like I said, when you go into that fire essence, or when you go into that water, that earth, you are also going in as you are still having a connection with your conscious reality, because it blips in and out. Like how I saw it in the beginning is, when I opened my eyes, I was there. I still had the feeling. I was there in the room. I still had the feeling that I was still a different space. But I was coming back. Basically, that's what it is. And when you close your eyes, you're basically turning off your physical sort of portals, your channels to interpreting your reality. So your inner space takes precedence over your experience, and now you can experience your inner space on a conscious reality, or a semi-conscious reality, because that's what the medicine does for you. So since you still have that heavy anchor of the physical reality here, you still have your emotions and all your baggage there. And this is what the purge is, the purging of that space is really all about. So you can take that energy into, see, when you're in your waking space, you're interpreting a small percentage of your soul through the physical vessel. When you're on ayahuasca or in any kind of psychedelics, I'll focus more on ayahuasca. When you're in ayahuasca, you're in your soul space interpreting your conscious reality, but your conscious reality doesn't even matter that much. It's like a 1% version of it, but it still matters. This is why people purge throughout the night, is because they're just doing it naturally. They're just in that purge ceremony of getting rid of whatever that is, while they are simultaneously experiencing their soul perspectives. So you don't have to do too much, because this is such a simple reality. You can just get that shit out of there. But if you focus, engage in that harmony, in that ceremony, then you start doing things that are, you start dancing. You dance with yourself. You're dancing with the medicine. You're dancing with the music. You're dancing as your soul. So you're dancing from the soul perspective as your soul, and simultaneously interpreting in blips. See, well, like when you're in a waking space, you only get blips of your soul in moments, in like that movie Waking Life, when the holy moment, when you're just like, let's just sit here and have a holy moment. Like, I'm gonna stare in your eyes, and you're gonna stare in my eyes. And sometimes when I'm in a holy moment, I just cry, and I just sit there and I'll just cry. And he doesn't know why he cries. It's because you're interpreting yourself through somebody else in that moment. That's your soul. That's your reflection. And we only get blips of this when you're in a distracted reality, if at all. So we separate ourselves from that space, and there's a lot of healing, there's a lot of experience. So like the feeling that you feel when you're in love, or in the zone, like when you're heavily in the zone, like athletes when they get in the zone, that's another reality. Like you're totally in the groove, like your vessel is working with you in a way that has it's not reading any kind of script or anything. It's just going. You're just in motion, as motion. So like I said, like the opposite version of that is you're, as your soul, interpreting when you want to, because it really doesn't matter. Like your emotions and all that other stuff, once you get comfortable with that space and you have no fear, you have nothing to worry about, you start to fly in other realms, in other parts of your reality. And you bring that stuff back. That's the thing. When you're in a 5-hour window there, your life is completely changed. You are now a different person. Just as you can shift in each moment, in each experience, in each thought, you're another person. In each day, you're another person. Well, you have a 5-hour window of being as your soul. That's a whole different world. That's a whole different you. So when you are there and you are in that space, you are clearing a lot of stuff. And when you're anchored in your soul, okay, so back to the emotional part. So this a lot of it, how it changes is because your emotions heavily weigh on you in your waking state reality. But when you are in a, like for example, ayahuasca space, your emotions are so far, like they in one space, like you can make them your reality. This is why people have some like fear perspectives where they have to face this stuff. And you, just like I said in the last video, you face the way you clear that energy is you face your fears, and then you are now a different person. You are empowering yourself to where now any kind of fear that comes up in your face, then you are now a bigger person, or a bigger energy, so it has to be a bigger whatever. So you're constantly expanding yourself. So when you have the ability, you have when you're in that ceremony, you have that ability in each moment, in each moment to process your emotions. And if you are heavily anchored in fear, if you are heavily anchored in the linear perspectives of your reality, and you don't really have any connections with your allness, your conscious mind will try to take over of your soul, and that's where the disconnect comes. And this is why people have a lot of difficulty in spaces sometimes, because eventually it'll just take over. But in the beginning, heavily in the beginning, it's because their linear perspectives, their conscious reality is trying to make sense or take over. It's not willing to let go into the soul, into the essence of who you are. And this is what the medicine is. This is basically, it's like the definition of fighting yourself. So in order for us to not have that fight and to just be comfortable in the waking state reality, this is what happens. We're stuck in this university law system, and it's comfortable to not challenge your reality. And this is why people have difficulty when you start talking about stuff. It makes people uncomfortable because you are challenging what they have built up as their reality. You can't say anything. You can't talk about things that are counter, that are not part of the social norm. You can't talk about things that are part of something that is beyond the waking state comfort level. So when you are in your space, when you're in your ayahuasca space, you're actually in your comfort zone of the soul, which is different than your comfort zone of the conscious reality or the physical reality. So when you try to, like I said before, you try to translate that, it doesn't translate, and then that manifests into purging, because you are actually purging out all those artificial roots that you have locked into an artificial reality, so you can reconnect with those soul rooted realities, which is yourself. So as you're doing that, you are also trying to interpret that information. So people manifest their deepest, darkest fears and all this other stuff because they're in that space, that ability. You have the ability to simultaneously clear all of that shit. You can get rid of all of it. You're getting all of that out of your system, and you're making deeper connections and deeper roots. This is if you are letting go and allowing yourself to do this. If you are still holding on to your conscious reality, if you come out of that reality and you don't allow yourself to interpret and anchor in that space, you're basically just fucking around. You're just watching a movie. You're not really doing anything. You're doing something, but there are people who take advantage of that and just like, yeah, it's a whole thing. But because you are always going to be you. You can't, there is no one thing that's going to there's no prescription drug that's going to shift everything for you. If you're not ready to do what it is that you think you're ready to do, then you won't do that shit, because that's not in line with who you are. Right now in this moment, you got other shit you need to do. So people who heavily use psychedelics and all this other stuff as a tool or a crutch, basically. If they use this as a crutch, then they're just taking advantage of it. And since it's natural, it's not really hurting anybody or anything. But it's not really helping because people are just using another thing as opposed to tapping into themselves. So since you are in that space rooted in your soul rather than in your physical reality, when you're rooted in your soul, you are experiencing your emotions, so your fears and all this other stuff, from a deeper rooted perspective. So you like, if you see some kind of image or feel something, then you're gonna see that as like a demon or something like that, or something scary. It'll feel deeper, it'll feel scary. And how I'm seeing it now is that purging is also an escape. It's kind of like how you wake up out of a dream, be out of a nightmare, because you want to get out of there. Because purging does connect you more to your physical body. Obviously you're throwing up, but if you, it is kind of like an escape, because you're in one sense, I'll go into that later, because that's anyway. So your emotions are just like that jungle. Like I said, it's not like reading a book. Like you can have an emotional response to an event in your conscious reality, and that can be like reading one page in an entire book, which can be a year, a day, a decade, whatever it is. But it's just one page, and you can learn something from that, or you can burn that page up. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. However you deal with your reality, that's what's going to happen. But when you're in ayahuasca and an emotion comes up, you are, since you're in that jungle, yeah. Since you're in that jungle, everything seems more lifelike. Everything seems more real, and you are more real at the same time. So you have more of a responsibility on one level to how you're going to respond. You have more. There's more of yourself. You can feel more of yourself. You can sense more of yourself. You can sense more of the people around you. You can sense the music, and the music is triggering more of who you are. You're in ceremony, so you have a deeper responsibility with your soul, with your essence. Like all this, everything is more rich. Everything is more in depth and detailed. And when you're in that world, you're in like your spirit world. You're in that this is what I was explaining in like in one sense, the split between the house slaves and the 100th human. That video is a totally powerless individual who has separated themselves from the Most High and has adopted the artificial reality as their own. Powerless, in a slave mind, believing in the movie itself, as opposed to tapping into the soul essence reality as the movie, as everything, as all that is, with a purpose and a meaning outside of the constructs of a limitation grid. This medicine and psychedelics as a whole takes you into that reality and allows you to experience yourself from a different root system. It's your actual root system. Like your waking state are just the branches. Your physical reality, like if you were the entire tree of life, then your physical reality are like the branches, the leaves, and the fruits. When you're actually the actual tree and the earth itself, when you go into a psychedelic space, and in this case ayahuasca, you are actually experiencing your roots, your root structure, and you know that your roots are not your own. Your roots are connected to everything. Your roots, it's one root system. It's one root system. And you know that with every essence. This is why people have difficulty with going there. This is why people have difficulty with coming back from facing that stuff and bringing that stuff back, because they're so heavily rooted in the facade, what they've created for themselves. Oh, well, I'm this person, and hey, I do this, and my friends are like this, and they talk about this, and they don't talk about that, and we're raised like this, and if you have no power, if you're simultaneously in a fear-driven reality, you won't have anywhere to put that information. You don't know where to do with that stuff, so you just lock yourself right back into that artificial reality, which is simultaneously locking your conscious observations and experiences of that that soul anchored space, you're locking yourself out of that experience. And collectively, the university system and all this stuff with like transhumanism and CERN and all this NASA programming, all this stuff is designed to lock you out of that reality. And once you get locked out individually and in your family and over generations, then it can be collective, and then people will start to defend the reality, the artificial reality that has been created on top of that root structure that everybody is still connected to, because we get little blips here and there, but we just can't tap into the depths of it because we are simultaneously creating our reality. And if you create it from a base of limitations and a destructive intelligence that is uprooted from the creative intelligence as a whole, then that will be the world that you create individually and collectively. But it's changing right now because people are obviously seeing what is going on collectively and how that started to affect the individual, and people are doing it individually. So this is why I said in like other videos, this is not an external shift. That's the side dish. That's the 1% of the other 99% shift that's happening individually, your soul. So I'll leave it there. I could go into more about this in other videos, but if you wanted to hear something more specific, if you want me to go into any kind of other focuses involving this or anything else, just go ahead and leave it in the comment section. And thank you for the individual who asked me to talk about this, because I've been meaning to talk about this stuff, but you know, some people don't want to hear about this stuff, or you know, whatever. But I like talking about this because this is like the essence of everything, and it's positive. It's ultimately positive for everybody. It's colorful. I like that. I like to be able to speak in colors and stuff like that. So thank you again, and yeah. Thank you. So from all my relations, until next time, peace, love, and harmony.